And you saw a lot of nice stories, like a team coming out of nowhere, making the playoffs, and then their head coach gets some votes, but is it enough to win over the media in Chicago's case? I don't think so. So I'm going to lock this in as a pipe dream for you. And then at the end of the year, when we do this podcast, you can either cry and tell me I was right, or I will buy you Shake Shack or the Yard. How does that sound? If Jim Boylan wins Coach of the Year, I will buy you a meal.
Okay,
Deal?
sounds good to me. There's very little risk involved here for me. I would say if folks are looking for a more logical pick, outside of my heart, I would say Quinn Snyder is a really good bet.
And I
Otherwise,
don't want anything in return. Okay, if Jim Boylan doesn't win, I just have the satisfaction of being right. So you really have everything to gain here, and I'm sitting here about to shell out $25 for a gourmet grilled cheese next time I'm in Pittsburgh. Okay.
well, that sounds good to me.
All right, good. So, Jim Boylan, if you're listening to this and you win Coach of the Year, you're on the hook for a sandwich, buddy. All right, moving on to the next category, most improved. And interesting, Ben, you're going with my pick from last year.
Yeah, I have a guy. I mean, there's a player here who I really like for the coming year. Anyone who's in a fantasy league with me will know that I'm trying to get him in every league I can, which is Karis LeVert of the Brooklyn Nets. I think he's due for a huge year. Um, the reports that are coming out of training camp are making me wonder if I'm going to have to change my next pick because it seems that the depth chart has been rearranged a bit. So I think my next pick will have to diverge here. But as far as most improved, I think he might very well be an all-star this year. So I'm all in on the Karis LeVert hype this year.
I love it because I think he would have garnered a lot more interest had he not gotten hurt and missed half the year. But then he came back and was the Nets' best player in the postseason. So I think it's a great pick. I did not want to go there 2 years in a row. So I'm going with Jaylen Brown of the Boston Celtics. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope Karras does win it because he deserves it. I think he does have a shot to be an all-star in the East this year, but also so does Jaylen Brown. You saw how he looked in FIBA, one of four Celtics on the team, and I think getting that experience in the summer and playing for Greg Popovich is only going to help his career further along and also help the Celtics as they navigate post Kyrie Irving and post Al Horford. I think Brown is arguably the third most important piece on the team behind Kemba Walker and Jason Tatum. Brown's kind of that forgotten draft pick that was one of the Celtics picks from the Nets. He's blossomed into a very serviceable player. So he's my pick. But the theme here, Ben, with these most improved guys is that these are two players from the 2016 draft that have received contract extensions. Now, Karas's was signed in August, and that was 3 years, $52.5 million, bargain basement deal for
What
the
a
Nets.
steal.
Jaylen Brown's deal, you are not quite in favor of, so I want to hear why.
I mean, I think it's going to be an awful contract. I think you're paying him for him to hit his potential. I mean, you're paying him almost $30 million a year. I don't see any way that this works out on for the Celtics. I mean, they're paying him a huge amount of money and they're taking away all the upside they have. And not to mention the fact that I just don't see who's paying a guy who's going to be your third or fourth option $30 million in free agency. He's a restricted free agent after the season. Why are you paying him now? Just wait, let someone throw a contract offer. Worst case, you're pretty much getting the same offer you just gave him now. So I thought that was a bad signing. I wasn't a big fan. I much preferred actually the move for Buddy Hield, where the Kings gave him only $86 million guaranteed. The terms of the contract were announced at 94, but ultimately that's a little over $20 million a year over 4 years. You know, if you're looking at the 94 number, that's something like 23. So I like that one a lot better, but I think there's just not much upside in that Jaylen Brown signing.
Can I still pick him for most improved, even though I think his deal sucks?
I'll allow it.
I mean, the deal doesn't suck for him. I just think the Celtics, if he doesn't blossom into a perennial all-star, that deal might be looking a little silly in 2 years. But, the 2016 draft class was quite interesting because you had Ben Simmons get that huge max extension. And then you see the Brown deal, which is almost $30 million a year, Buddy Hields, which was 4 for 86 guaranteed. So those are monster contracts, right? Ben Simmons, Jaylen Brown, Buddy Hield. Why is it that the Nets got Karis LeVert and Prince under contract for the next 3 seasons for less than Jaylen Brown's total contract. I mean, either Sean Marks is a wizard or
Yeah.
Prince and Levert care more about winning than they do about making that extra $5-6 million. I think both of them will get better NBA paydays down the line, but I think both of these guys want to stay in Brooklyn and be the third, fourth, fifth guys behind Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. I mean, but why is it that the Nets got these great deals from players in that class, and then you see these drastic overpays just to keep these young guys from hitting the open market?
I think the biggest thing is that they've been early on most of these. If you
Prince
look
was
at
right at the deadline, but I know
oh
Karis LeVert's
yeah,
was. But
Levert, they were early on Levert. It was similar to the deal they made to get Prince with the Hawks. They were the first team to make the move. So they set the market and they set it low. And I think with the Prince extension, it's a little different, but I think one of the things that they did there is that they feel like they're going to develop him, that he's going to have a good season with them. So what they feel like in Brooklyn is that they're paying him at his lowest, that he's going to improve this year. He's a 25-year-old guy who's shown some flashes, and I think the Nets front office feels like they can bring something out of him that he didn't show last year. I don't totally blame them because if you look at it, Jason, this year he's going to have more responsibility than he's had, except for perhaps in 2017 with the Hawks. Last year he was injured. He was less involved in the offense than he was the year before. And also, they know that after this season, they're going to need role players to surround some of the guys on their team. So I think the Nets are betting on their coaching staff, their developmental team, and his ability to rebound. Because I think people forget that he missed a huge chunk of last season with an injury. And if you take that and you consider that maybe he's a little bit better than what he showed last year, and then you take in the Brooklyn's coaching staff and their developmental team, I think you could make the case that they got him on a pretty good bargain for this one as well.
so I think pound for pound right now, Karis LeVert's a better player than Buddy Hield. I'm not going to make the comparison to Jaylen Brown right now, but Taurean Prince, I mean, a lot of people thought he was a throw-in in the trade because he didn't fit into Lloyd Pierce's system. He ends up re-upping with the Nets, along with the cap space needed when they shed Alan Crabb's deal to sign both Durant and Irving. I mean, this could not have worked out any better for the Nets. It shows the Nets organization's commitment to Prince is more than just a throw into this deal. And I think the Nets are set up beautifully with these two deals. I mean, are there any other extensions before we move on that you deem newsworthy? I know Brown, Hield, and Prince were the big three coming out of Monday.
No, I think that's it, but I think it shows kind of where these young players are heading, and it's actually quite interesting, Jason, because I had originally picked Levert to be both my most improved player and sixth man of the year, but the Nets made a decision, Jason, to switch around the rotation. The early depth charts had Harris starting at the three and Dinwiddie starting opposite Irving. They have since decided to start Levert to begin the season. So I now have to amend my pick, Jason. And so I'm going to make a pick. However, I have to admit I'm not quite as confident as I was. When it was Levert, I felt pretty good. I'm going to choose Dinwiddie, but I don't feel great about it, Jason. I have a feeling that there's going to be some stiff competition from guys like Jeremy Lamb, guys like Marcus Smart. So I'm a little bit less enthused about this. I'm not going to lie to you, but I'm gonna stick with the Nets and I'm gonna go with Dinwiddie for my sixth man. But I think I know where you're going here.
Are you ready to just admit you're a Nets fan? Usually I'm the one that's picking Nets for these categories, and this year it's you. I love it. It makes me the more objective one, and it still allows me to feel good if your guy gets that pick. I think Dinwiddie got screwed off the ballot last year by the Clippers having both Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell on the ballot for sixth man of the year. I mean, two six men from one team. And ultimately, I think that's going to be the case again because my pick for sixth man of the year, a little bit boring, but because the Clippers are so damn good, I'm picking Lou Will. I think his relevance and importance to the team will be even more important with the Paul George injury to start the year and Kawhi Leonard's load management. I think Williams has a chance to come in off the bench and take over the game. The Clippers are going to be more in the national spotlight than they were last year, and I think Williams is going to be on TV a lot, profiled a lot. So I think he is my pick for sixth man of the year.
Yeah, that's the
So
pick. That's definitely the pick. And I would say if anyone's listening, that's probably where you should put your money over Dinwiddie, to be honest. But in the
No,
effort of
pick
keeping it
Spencer.
different.
Pick Spencer and his bitcoins. It's fine. It's
Yeah,
fine.
absolutely.
So
Well, I'll
that's it.
stick with it.
That's it
Go
for
ahead.
that's it for the awards category. So we covered MVP, Rookie of the Year, Coach of the Year, Most Improved, and Sixth Man. So Ben and I wanted to add a couple of fun categories before we get into our final predictions, playoff teams, NBA champions, and the like. So my additional category that I wanted to add was superstar most likely to be traded. And I think if you were listening to NBA radio, television, any media outlets all summer, you thought Bradley Beal would be the next guy up. Someone proposed this crazy deal for the Nets to trade LeVert, Allen, Dinwiddie, Harris, and 2 first-round picks for Bradley Beal, completely gutting their team. I looked at that deal and I wanted to throw up. I do not want Bradley Beal at that cost. But he ends up re-upping with the Wizards and trying to ride this thing out long term. He knows he still has John Wall there when he comes back from his torn Achilles. And other than that, the Wizards are in rebuilding mode. So it wasn't Beal. But before we get to our picks, what do you think, Ben, of Beal deciding to ultimately re-up in Washington and all but put an end to this trade speculation that's been going on since free
I,
agency ended?
I mean, I don't really understand why people think that the whole trade thing is over. I mean, for the Wizards, it's much better for them to make this signing because extending him makes him significantly more valuable as a trade asset. If he was on an expiring deal, other teams would have to get his commitment that he's going to re-sign. And ultimately, I mean, look at these guys who are going. I mean, Kyrie Irving comes to the Celtics, has multiple years left on his deal, Jason, walks away. I mean, a lot of these players, we had been talking about how Paul George had chosen the Thunder, how that was such a great moment for the small market franchises, Jason. And look at what happened. He leaves for Los Angeles. So I think it was a very smart move by the Wizards to sign him. And I don't think it puts an end at all to him getting traded. That said, I think we're going to be a little boring and probably choose the same player here for most likely to get traded because I have Kevin Love. But I'm going to let you wax poetic about that and say that I think there's going to be 2 guys who get traded during the season, Jason. One
I think
is Kevin Love, and the other is Kyle Lowry. I think Lowry ends up getting moved as well.
wow. Wow. All right. So let's start with Kevin Love. I think the logical thing is that the Cavs are not going to be good. They're building around their backcourt of Colin Sexton and Darius Garland. So Kevin Love really doesn't have a place on this team anymore, even though he's at his best when his team's terrible. But I think ultimately, as Pete said on our Northwest Division preview show a couple of weeks ago, that he sees his Blazers as the likeliest destination for a guy like Kevin Love. He's from the area. I think he would be a great third piece next to Lillard and McCollum as they try and contend for a title in the West. And not a lot of people are high on Portland right now. I'm hearing a lot of pundits say that they're on the outside looking in of the playoff picture because the West is so good. I think they get Kevin Love in February and they make a serious run in the playoffs.
I mean, if they do get Love, I just think they might be the best offense in the league during the regular season. If they could have him for the whole season, obviously that's not going to happen. But I think that's one of the best offenses in the league with him there. I mean, he's a very underrated playmaker. He's so good shooting the ball. He gives so much to their offense. And one of the things, Jason, that I think is so critical and is something we're going to have to see what happens with that team with this year is they have Hassan Whiteside, but it really remains to be seen if Hassan Whiteside can make the right reads out of traps and just in general when he's setting picks for Lillard or McCollum, if he can make the reads out of there. We see it obviously with Draymond Green, a guy who's really experienced and has been able to do that. I wonder a little with Whiteside, a guy who you don't have to worry at all is Kevin Love. He knows how to pop, he knows how to roll, and he knows how to make plays out of that. So I think that would be a great trade for them. I'm going to say Lowry. Again, I do think Kevin Love is the most likely to get moved. But just so we can talk about another guy, I think Lowry gets moved as well, Jason. The more I look at this team, the less I feel like the Raptors are going anywhere this year. And I have a feeling, Jason. I don't have any inside information, but I have a feeling that my Masai Ujiri is just not going to sit on his hands and wait. I think he wants to get this team back to where they were a year ago. And unless he feels like this team is a piece